Hello, and thank you for joining me. This is Sierra from Sierra T Designs, and today I have this elegant white and gold leaf fragments slimline card to share with you. So let's jump right in. So to start, I am going to create my slimline base, and I like to make mine 8.5 by 3.5 inches. So I take a full sheet of cardstock and I trim off 4 inches. That creates my base, and then of course I score it in the center, which is the 3.5 mark. I know that there are a few different measurements for slimline cards. Anything that fits in a number 10 business envelope really counts as your slimline card. This is just kind of my preferred size, so this is the one I have a tendency towards, but you of course can do whatever size you like. This is just how I like to make them. And then I am going to cut down a panel and a mat as my usual. And I kind of have to eyeball this because the trimmer I like to use on camera is the Tim Holtz trimmer, and it doesn't cut to the 8.5 mark. So I cut this one down about 1/4 inch smaller than my base. And then I have to kind of guess as to how long I need it, because I want it to be that same 1/4 inch in length for the panel to fit. But you could, of course, get a 12-inch trimmer or a 12 by 12 trimmer. And then this would be super easy to do. Or the bigger Tim Holtz trimmer. I don't happen to own one. I've been eyeballing buying one. However, they are a little bit harder to find at the moment. So I'm wondering if they're kind of redesigning them. So I'm kind of trying to be patient and see if that's going to happen, because it's always kind of fun to get new Tim Holtz products. But then you're going to see that I do have to eyeball my size a fair amount. And that's why. You could absolutely bring out a bigger trimmer and not have to eyeball this. But I have a tendency towards eyeballing things pretty much all the time, so I don't really mind, but I do have to go back and forth quite a bit to get the length that I need. And there's about 1/8 inch difference between each layer. And then I'm going to bring in the Tim Holtz Flourishing Layer Stencil and some Moonstone Nuvo Glimmer paste. And I'm going to just coat the whole of it. So this is the panel that I just trimmed down that's going to go on top of that gold layer. And I just bring in a palette knife, and I don't have anything on the back of this for like stick. You could, of course, add some pixie spray if you wanted to. I don't have anything on this. I find when you're working with pastes, you don't really need it. The time that I want to bring in like a pixie spray is when I'm working with like inks and I'm blending on the panel. Then I find the little bits from the stencil really want to stand up. So I tend to use pixie spray or whatnot more often when I'm working with something that I'm blending on top of. Whereas pastes, I find it just kind of holds the stencil in place and I don't have to worry about it. And of course, the stencil's not quite long enough for my slimline card. Not a big deal to me. I just moved it and layered on some more paste at the end of the card there. It does end up smushing the stuff that I did a little bit, but it's really hard to tell, and I'm going to put the leaves on top of it so you won't even notice. So of course, I'm going to bring in the leaf fragment dies. These are probably one of my favorite dies that Tim Holtz has done. Not ever. He's done some amazing dies, but recently, I guess, because this is a set from 2021, and I've used it so many times. I love these dies so much, and I think that this card really turned into kind of like an ode to Tim Holtz dies and gold and white. I have a tendency towards both. I love Tim Holtz products. You guys know if you've been on my channel for a while, I love Tim Holtz products, so I do kind of end up using, I think I used 3 different die sets from him in this set, and a stencil as well. So I had a lot of fun with this card, and I love white and gold. It's just so classic. I don't think you can ever go wrong with a white and gold card. So I did kind of bring in that moonstone glitter in the background just to add a little extra shimmer and shine, but otherwise it's pretty much just white and gold. So I had a lot of fun with this. So I did bring in my craft pick, and I'm just poking out the little leaf fragments in the leaves so that you can kind of see that cool glittery background through them. I think that this adds a lot of texture and interest to the card, and I love how this card came out. It's maybe a little extra, but if you've been on my channel for a while, you know that I love a little extra. So I am majorly a more is more style of creator. So I brought in this is another Tim Holtz die. This is the Alphanumeric Stretch Upper, and I cut out the word lovely. You could, of course, use any word for this. I chose lovely because I thought that it fit nicely with what I was doing, but you could literally do anything beautiful, or just love would work too. And I cut it out 3 times from that scrap of cardstock that I had left from the HammerMill piece that I cut out for the top panel. And I just cut it out the 3 layers, and then I'm layering them up here with my Barely Art glue. This just lets it stand out a little more. Because I'm not bringing in another color, I'm only going to use white and gold. I need something to help these letters stand up from all of the other white in the background. I mean, the leaves will help, of course, because the leaves are going to kind of matte behind the word, but to create that more almost chipboard effect, I did want to layer them up to give them some more depth and dimension so that they stand on their own with a color palette that's very, just 2 colors, very kind of plain. So that's kind of what I was thinking there. And then this is a 3rd Tim Holtz die set. This is the Brushstroke Butterflies die set. And I brought in just the little one, the littlest die from this. And I cut it out in Pearlescent Vellum that I layered with my regular heavy vellum to give that vellum extra strength, because I want the wings to curl up from the body. And then I also used the exact same gold cardstock that I have for the leaves. I used that for the elements on the leaves that are kind of that extra shadowy part. I guess this might actually be considered the highlight part, but so the base of the butterfly is pearlescent vellum that I layered with my regular vellum, and then the accents to the butterfly are the same gold cardstock that I used for the leaves and the mat. And now you absolutely could have cut out pieces of the base that, like the matte part of the gold cardstock. I didn't in this card. You absolutely can. I have in others. I didn't in this specific card. There's no real reason for it other than I didn't. But you absolutely should or could if you want to. Or you could even bring in like a rectangle die and just cut out the center so that nobody knows. But I knew that I was going to have some issues getting my HammerMill cardstock to stick down with the moonstone paste on top of it, because I do find paste can really warp your cardstock. So I chose to just keep it the way it is to give that cardstock extra strength. But by all means, you can absolutely cut a piece out and save it for later. So because the panel is super textured with that moonstone, I am going to bring in my acrylic blocks and weigh down the leaves so that they actually adhere to the moonstone paste. You could bring in foam tape if you want to do that, but I didn't really want to kind of try to cut pieces around the area where the holes are in the leaves. So I chose to just use my liquid glue. This is the Nuvo Deluxe. I jump between Nuvo Deluxe and Barely Art quite often, depending on what kind of a tip I need based on what I'm adhering. But I just used my Nuvo Deluxe for this and used it all over the back, and then I'm just going to adhere the leaves down. And I did kind of have them laid out how I wanted them to go on the card beforehand, so I did know kind of what I was aiming for with it. And then I just kind of shift my blocks along depending on where I need them to sit, depending on what leaf I had just adhered. And I did leave, like, this took me a little while because I left it to dry. Like, I left the panel to dry for quite a while before I came back and adhered anything. I left the blocks on the leaves for a while just before I came and adhered the words, the letters, just so that I knew everything would actually stay adhered. Because there is quite a bit of texture and dimension in this card, I didn't want anything to fall off. So like here you can see that I'm starting to put my letters on, and it doesn't want to adhere. So once again, I'm going to put one letter down and I'm going to stick blocks on top of it and I'm going to let it adhere. And then I'm going to do the same for every letter. And I am showing you this just because I think that it's helpful to see parts when we make cards. Sometimes I find when I'm watching other people create cards and they cut pieces out, I'm kind of like, hey, wait, how did we get here? So I kind of do like to try to leave these things in so you can kind of see them. Not necessary. Every letter is going to go on the exact same way. There's no difference here other than I have brought in my Barely Art glue at this point to use that really fine tip behind the letters. And I did bring in my T-square ruler, measuring out the center, and then I started that center point between the V and the E because I have 6 letters, so I want to make sure that it is centered. And again, I mostly eyeball it. I do have a ruler, so I am pretty much positive that it's centered, but honestly, I don't think that you could tell. Like if this was slightly off center because eyeballing is difficult for you, nobody's gonna notice. And anybody who's gonna say something is not somebody I'd send a card to. So there's no concern there. I promise that this is a little more tedious than it looks. it's not, or sorry, it looks a little more tedious than it is. It actually worked out pretty well and came together pretty quickly. But I did leave this in just so you could see me doing it and see that I did use the ruler to kind of measure it out and make sure that they were aligned at the bottom. And then I do weigh it down with the acrylic blocks to make sure that they stay there. And then we come to layering up all of the panels. So I'm going to bring my Nuvo Deluxe glue back in. This bottle is almost empty, so I kind of have to fight with it a bit to get some glue out. But I do manage to get some. And I did put a fair amount on the back of this panel because it is a little bit warped in the center. Not a lot. It actually came out really well, but it is a little bit warped in the center. So I did end up just coating the back in some glue and making sure that it would adhere flat. And then I'm going to do the same with this piece to make sure that everything adheres flat. I don't want the gold piece to bow in the center. And I found it can if you haven't let your paste dry, because there's still moisture in that cardstock and that moisture will transfer, and then you've got a big bubble in the middle of the card. And ask me how I know this, because it has happened to me before. So I'm really careful about letting my pastes dry and then making sure that I'm adhering everything really well. And then it's time to add that little butterfly. Now, the butterfly doesn't stand out too much. I love it though. I mean, it's not necessary. You could have stopped here. I'm just a more is more style crafter, and I want to add, every shiny thing to every piece of my card as much as I can. But you don't need the butterfly, but I love what it adds. And then this is it. I'm done. I'm not going to add anything else, which I know is a little shocking. I pondered bringing in some pearls, guys, but I held myself back and I didn't add anything else. But I did trim off any of the little leaves that were hanging off of the edge of the card so that I could fit this in a slimline envelope. But this is the card I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's not as over the top as it maybe came out, but I love it. So I am more than happy about how this card turned out. I'd love to know what you think. I'd love it if you'd leave me a comment, leave me a like, and maybe consider subscribing. I do new videos every Monday and Thursday. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.